Welcome to the first episode of the Soxcast in the year 2022. This is episode number 11 in our series. And joining us now, he was a pitching coach for the Utica Brewers in 2013, was the manager of the team in 2015 during the final iteration of the Brewers. But, we've been breaking a lot of news. We've, had a couple of different player announcements. Ryan Enos is coming back. Dewey Roden announced he was coming back, all on the Soxcast. And breaking this news now, this guy is going to be coming back as our pitching coach in 2022, helping, continue the reputation of Utica's great pitching staffs over the years. So joining us now is the new pitching coach who already has familiarity with the city of Utica, Chris Amaya. Chris, it's been 7 years since I last saw you, but hey, it's really good to get you here on the show.
Absolutely, Jamie. I was honored when you had asked me to do this. I can't even tell you how excited I am to be back in Utica, now with the Blue Sox, not the Brewers anymore. And I'm just so excited. It's great to see you. I know we've texted and kept in touch over the last 7 years. No, it's great to see you actually, see a face now. And I look forward to seeing you go, coming up this summer.
Oh yeah, and trust me. I mean, given how electric things were last summer, it's only going to get better and better this year. But let's talk about your previous experiences in Utica. I mean, you're a California guy, so
Yep.
when you got to Utica, I mean, I feel like before that, had you had any experiences? Because I know as a baseball fan, I've heard you went to Boston before, but I don't know if this was around the same time that you first got to Utica. But tell us about the story about getting to Utica and your initial impression on the city.
So to answer your question, back in 2008 was my first time coaching college summer ball back east. I was in Massachusetts, in a town called North Adams. It was a great experience. Absolutely loved it. I am very familiar with the whole New England area. My wife was born and raised in Vermont, and I had been back east numerous times prior to coming to coach in Utica. I had been in New York. I had been to Cooperstown. I had never been specifically to Utica though. So in 2013, or I should say about 2012, I had kind of gotten the itch to coach summer ball again. My sons were getting a little bit older. They were really young when I did it in 2008. And so it was hard. It's hard to, especially with young kids. So they got to be a little bit older in late 2012. I talked to my wife, I kind of got the itch to do it again. And I started putting feelers out. I started putting feelers out to a lot of different teams, and it kind of, to get my wife to buy in, it had to be somewhere in the New England area, so she could go visit her family and stuff. And one of the many emails I kind of sent out in terms of a feeler, I sent to Butch Russo, then the owner of the Brewers, and Butch replied to me, and he kind of got the ball rolling from there, and eventually got hired as the pitching coach in 2013. And again, not having really been familiar specifically with Utica, I went out there and just really fell in love with the city. Fell in love with really just the whole atmosphere, the people in Utica, all the organization like yourself, and I definitely knew that it was something I wanted to continue to do as much as my schedule and personal schedule will allow.
So that was the first season in the PGCBL for Utica, and obviously standings wise, it didn't do great, but I mean, you had some pretty good pitchers as the pitching coach. But that year, I mean, what was it like watching Michael Pearson have such an unbelievable individual season? I mean, he obviously stood out. I mean, Jay Gonzalez had a great year too, but Pearson, I mean, 63 hits in 42 games and a 404 average. You don't see that every day.
No, Michael Pearson, that summer was an absolute stud for us. Coming out of Appalachian State, out there in North Carolina, Piercy, if I remember right, he hit over 400.
Yep, 404.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, especially wood bat, That's an incredible, especially in a league as tough as our league. That's incredible. You mentioned Jay Gonzalez. Jay was fantastic as well, coming out of Auburn. And we had, besides this guy, we had a guy by the name of Joe Gallup, who was a New York guy. If I remember, he went to Concordia, New York. He was the other guy who hit well over 300 for us, and did a fantastic job. We had Spencer Mumford, who did a great job for us. Keyshawn Smith, Michael McClellan, who went on to some great things over at Columbus State. We had some guys who could swing it. And on top of that, we certainly had some quality arms. Everybody from Jordan Brooks, who was one of our mainstays out of the bullpen. Nick Schiavone was another great bullpen guy. Cody Miller, Kellen Hackett. I mean, if I remember correctly, our strength of our team, especially specifically our pitching staff, was our bullpen. Those guys, did a fantastic job. Ryan Butzer, as well, submarine guy, came out of Davenport. And that's not to take anything away from our starters. Eric Brothers, who was probably our number one starter by default, who did a fantastic job that summer. Hunter McIntosh, out of Alabama State, did a great job. Jorge Pantoja, Toji, love that guy. He did a great job as well. So we definitely, the record, I don't think our record reflects how much talent we had on that team in 2013.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about the amount of talent not reflecting in the record. I mean, the year after that, I mean, a 9-36 team, but you still had Cedric Mullins of all people on that squad. But you come in the year after that abysmal season, but now you're the manager. What was the overall change in philosophy? I mean, or how better question would be, what was the transition like going from just being a pitching coach as a specialist more to overseeing everything now as the skipper of a team that arguably was even more talented than that 2013 squad?
So, even though my background is in pitching and I've had, numerous jobs as a pitching coach, I've never really pigeonholed myself as only a pitching guy. I always really fancy myself more as a manager, a head coach, because just having knowledge of all facets of the game. Yeah, certainly my background's in pitching. I specialize in pitching, but I've always considered myself to be more, of a well-rounded, more of a head coach manager, type. So in 2015, or I should again, kind of late 2014, again, kind of got that itch again, wanted to coach again, summer ball. And specifically wanted to go back to Utica. I had such an amazing experience in 2013. I had told my wife again, I really want to do this again. And I remember, and I followed the team all through 2014, and again, saw the 9-win season, just everything, and kind of talking to Butch and kind of getting some of the other details that went on. It just seemed like the team was kind of in disarray. And I believe that I could come in and bring a lot of stability to that position as a manager, and try to bring some more stability, back to the organization, at least in terms of being on the field. So I had reached out to Butch and, just wanted to kind of confirm that the manager from 2014 was not going to be coming back, which I kind of already knew that was the situation, and had just expressed to Butch that I would love the opportunity to kind of come in and just kind of revitalize the team, especially after a 9-win season. And I believed I could do that, through also kind of with some connections and bringing in some quality guys. I really thought I could help, get the organization kind of back going in the right direction, and, talk to Butch about it. And he was on the same page, and hired me to come in 2015 as a manager, and just, again, as much fun as I had in 2013, to come in and be the skipper in 2015, just it took it to a whole nother level. And I loved it. I look back at that season with just so much fondness.
So, I mean, obviously, you had a great array of talent, but I think compared to 2013, You definitely had a great array of characters. I mean, you couldn't get enough of it. I mean, I've talked about previous episodes before about some of the great characters. You talked
Let's
about
get Dama Swing.
Let's get Dama Swing. I mean, first of all, I mean, have you ever coached a player with that much, I don't know how to say it, just that much goofiness in a guy like Aaron Smith, who, when you put him in a game, was a gamer?
Aaron Smith, I mean, God, I've been coaching 20 years. And to answer your question, no, there are not many guys like Aaron Smith. Aaron Smith brought so much energy, brought such a positive attitude. That guy could have hit $160, and he still would have been a huge part of that team, of that playoff team. And certainly he hit well better than $160. He had a really good summer. But what that guy brought in terms of energy, in terms of positivity, despite how well he did on the field, what he brought in terms of those other things far exceeded what he ever did on the field. Aaron, and I had to bust out the get Dama Swing because of all the things that Aaron did, and I can think of a couple of other ones too. Go Brewers is another one.
Calling buses rhinos is another thing.
Which one?
Calling buses rhinos was another thing. Like,
yes, I absolutely remember that too. But of all the things, the get Dama Swing, I will never forget that. I will absolutely never forget that. And the great thing about Aaron, the great thing about kind of that running joke is he would bust it out of nowhere. I mean, we would be in the middle of a game. It didn't matter the score, didn't matter the inning, didn't matter what was going on. And he'd be in the dugout and he would just belt out, get Dama Swing with no rhyme or reason. And, you know, as focused and as intense as I am, you know, as a manager, I would hear it and I would do everything I could to not laugh. And there were times I couldn't. I would actually physically walk away because I would start laughing at some of the stuff that Aaron would say, and specifically, you know, the get Dama Swing crack. Like I said, I'll never forget that. Smitty is a wonderful guy and still doing really well. Yeah, I tried to keep in touch with him as much as I can. Still doing well. Still a great kid.
So you want to talk about, I mean, you know, 2013 as a pitching coach is one thing, but the pitching staff that you were fortunate enough to oversee, my God, that is you could say it's a who's who because you had some studs. Talk to me about just how lucky you were to have the starting staff that you had and then having an unbelievable closer like Wei Young Sao.
You know, when you talk about that 2015 staff, you have to start with Michael Messier. Mess was an absolute stud, and I don't care what anybody says. That guy should have been the PGCBL Pitcher of the Year. I will say that, and no disrespect. If I remember right, one of the kids out of Elmira got it.
Yeah, it was Lewis.
Justin Lewis. Yeah, from Kentucky. You're right. I'd put Michael up there with any of those guys. In fact, Michael started the All-Star game that year. Again, it begins and ends with Michael. He was just an absolute stud for us that year. ERA was far below 2. I mean, it was one something or another.
1.38, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, you know, sub 1.5, and that's, you know, unbelievable. It's not a shock that he got drafted, you know, a couple years later, and you know, yeah, Mike was our horse that year. But again, another guy, and you know, for people who are involved in that, you know, with that team in 2015, a guy who just flew under the radar, but was an absolute horse for us was Ryan Simpler. Ryan Simpler. It cannot be overstated how much Ryan Simpler and what he meant to our pitching staff. Again, while Mess has the stats, had better stuff, especially in terms of pro ball, stuff. But Ryan Simpler was an absolute gamer, and the perfect example of that was him throwing our team on his back, going to Adirondack, in my opinion, toughest place to pitch, because that place is a bandbox. Throwing our team on his back, throwing a one-hit shutout, I believe it was, and he had double-digit strike, two-hit shutout.
He took a no into the 7th.
Okay, yeah, a two-hit shutout, had double-digit strikeouts, through a complete game, which, with summer ball, you always protect arms, and that's the primary thing. You got to protect your arms. You got to keep your guys healthy. But despite the fact he had double-digit Ks, his pitch count was low, and I remember going to him after he lost the no-no, because I really didn't want to take him out, especially when he had a no-no. He lost a no-no, and you said, if I remember, he lost in the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember going to him after the 7th and saying, hey, how do you feel? Let's think about getting you out of here. And I remember him saying, absolutely not. He said he felt fine. His pitch count was low. He said, hey, if pitch count gets up, then yeah, okay. But otherwise I'm good to go. And, he threw us on his back, won that game. And that's the game that clinched the playoff spot for us. So, again, it can't be overstated what he meant to our team. Colin G, another guy who kind of flew under the radar, another guy who was an all-star that year out of University of Oakland, did an amazing job. Again, another guy who stats don't really indicate, I think, how well he pitched, was Patrick Bellinger out of Tiffin. Belly did a great job for us in both as a starter and as a kind of a long reliever. Tyler Palm, did an amazing job and had a huge win for us in a doubleheader. In one of the games of doubleheader, we had to go at Victor towards the end of the season, and we got a sweep at Victor, which really helped us kind of put us in a position to where we could clinch that playoff spot. He threw one of the games of that doubleheader and did an amazing job, and then Christian Johnson threw the other game, and that was his first start and his only start of the year, and he did a fantastic job. And again, you mentioned Sal. I mean, Sal was just an absolute, the back end of the bullpen. I mean, he would come in and it was game over, when Sal came in. So yeah, just a lot of guys who just did a fantastic job. Ton of talent on that staff.
So on the hitting side, I mean, you talk about that playoff clinching game. I mean, the funny thing is, there's a lot of competition at second base. Vinny Capone was your starter, but the guy who earned the spot because of just hitting well with a 347 average, getting on base, and in that playoff clinching game, driving in 4 runs and going yard in that place. And it wasn't a cheap one either. I know it's in Boonville, but still, Jared Baldinelli and, all of the charisma and, just the overall style of play at 5'7". But also, I mean, that was the first year before it really took off the next year with a good old Careless Whisper.
No, Baldy did an amazing job in that game. In fact, if I remember right, Baldy had 2 home runs that season. I believe both of them were at Adirondack. Mm-hmm. But I remember the one he hit in that playoff clinching game. That ball would have been out of most ballparks, including our home stadium. He absolutely crushed that ball. Baldy did a great job, in that particular game. And you mentioned, Vinny Capone, who also, you talk about a guy kind of flying under the radar. Vinny did an amazing job for us, and Vinny was kind of entrenched at second base in the early part of our season. And I remember Baldy coming into the manager's office one day, and he was a little frustrated with how much he was playing, and I don't blame him. Vinny was getting more at bats than him, and Baldy was like, hey, just give me an opportunity, and if I fall on my face, I fall on my face, and you can sit me for the rest of the year, essentially. But give me a chance. And the way he handled it was very professional, very respectful, and I took it to heart, and that's okay. And we started getting Baldy some more at bats than we'd been getting, and the guy was an on base machine because besides the fact that he hit like almost 350 for us. He also had a ton of walks. I mean, if I had to guess, his on-base percentage had to be well over 450 because with batting average the way he was, or what way it was, and then the amount of walks that he drew. The guy was just getting on base like no other, and initially he was kind of a 9-hole guy for us, guy to kind of turn over the top of the order, and then he eventually became our leadoff guy, and just did an amazing job, not just in that particular game, but in that particular game as well.
I mean, Ball was just one guy, but man, you had a lot of guys that knew how to hit. And I remember, so first of all, the story of the last regular season game after you guys clinched the playoff berth, because you had made a promise to Pat Bellinger, he got a 3-pitch inning against Amsterdam, and you put him in left field. You held up your end of the bargain. Aaron Smith, aka the greatest left-handed second baseman of all time, got the nod at that position. But that night, Ryan Cox didn't play in that game. His competitor, Christian Santistebon, for the batting title did. He went 0 for 4, and Cox won the batting title. What do you remember from that, and just how good Coxie was? He had a 5-hit game earlier that month against Albany, I believe.
So there's a couple things I remember about that night. I'll talk about the whole pitchers playing defense and all that stuff in a second. The situation with Cox and the batting title. He didn't play that night, and it had nothing to do with the fact that we were trying to protect his average or anything. And I remember the manager of Elmira got pissed when Cox was not in the lineup. It had nothing to do with that. What most people don't realize is Cox battled a back injury all season, all season long. He was battling this back injury. And while he did play in the vast majority of games, we would have to give him some days off, especially like if we had a day off. He almost never played the game before a day off to give him 2 days off in a row because of that back injury. And because we had already clinched the playoffs and knowing that he was going to need to play in that playoff game, although if I remember right, he DH'd in that.
Yes, he
game.
did. And
he started DHing a lot more towards the end of the season, just to kind of give his back a rest because his back was a mess. And of course, he didn't want to come out of the lineup. So we started DHing him a lot more. So in that game against Elmira, he didn't play. And I remember the Elmira manager getting pissed because he thought that we were trying to protect, his average. And that wasn't the case at all. It was a case of we had already clinched a playoff spot. We knew he was going to play in that playoff game. So we wanted to give him the day off against Elmira in what is quite I don't want to say meaningless game, but it was going to have no bearing on our standings in our playoff, situation, playoff seed. So there was no point in playing him, knowing that full well we wanted him at 100% health, in that playoff game against Victor. So that's why Ryan didn't play. It had nothing to do with protecting his average or anything like that. He was just, we were trying to sit him to save that, to save his back. Once we had clinched the playoff spot and knowing that Elmira game again had no bearing on our playoff seed or anything, it's every position player thinks they're a pitcher and every pitcher thinks they can hit. So, and at the end of the day, yes, we're there to win. Yes, we're there to develop our guys, but we're also there to have some fun. And this was, the end of the season, which is it's a grind. It's a grind for the guys. We're going on our 45th, 46th game, whatever it may have been. And that was kind of my reward to those guys for just grinding out that season. And so, so we had Bellinger play left field. I remember we got quite a few of the pitchers and at bat. We kind of rotated them in the DH spot. Aaron played second base. Aaron had asked to play second base, and we let him do it. And that was kind of a debacle. He made a couple of errors, and I remember we pitched a few of our position guys. Kyle Shade threw an inning. If I remember right, Dom Brager, I think, threw an inning.
And Mace, Michael McCullen's younger brother, threw an inning.
So, but with Mason was actually toying with the idea of becoming a pitcher, which I don't believe ever actually came to fruition. But with the situation with McClellan was a little bit different because there was some thought there about him actually converting into a pitcher. I don't know if it was at Columbus or wherever, and like I said, I don't think it actually ever came to fruition. But yeah, I remember Mason throwing an inning as well. But I remember specifically Shade and Brager throwing in. If I remember right, I think Daniel Gober started that game.
Yes, he did.
And then he went a few innings, and then I remember we jumped out to a huge lead. And we had jumped out to a huge lead. I want to say we were up like 6-7 runs in the first couple of innings, and we turned the game over to the position guys, and at the end of the day, I know we ended up losing that game. I forget what the score. I had 14-11.
It was 15-11.
15-11. Okay, yeah. So
it was a gong show.
It was, and you know what? The guys had fun. Now, if we were at home, I don't know that we would have done it at home. But especially with us being on the road, clinch a playoff spot into the season, let's go have some fun, fellas, and then go get the playoff game, a day or two later.
So, obviously, I learned some things after the fact, just from keeping in touch with the guys, obviously, if everyone's at 100%, I really think you guys beat Victor, especially at that dump of a high school field they have. And I will not waste any opportunity to dunk on Victor because they deserve it for only the existing 2 seasons. And again, playing on a high school field and also having this sports complex that they were going to have that never came to fruition either. So, but talking about that game, if in a perfect world, you guys win that game, but Mess's arm was apparently jello at that point, and Sal just was exasperated as well. I mean, you can't expect a guy to just go out there, pitch to a 0 ERA all year and expect that to, carry on even through playoffs. So, from your end, what did you see going wrong in that game?
It's funny. I remember Mess, his control, his command was awful that day. And without knowing, and I obviously subsequently had talked to him about this and kind of confirmed what I had already kind of suspected. He was tired. And again, we take pride. We talk about, obviously, Cox's back was, aching and stuff, but we didn't have, injuries, that season. And especially when we look at pitchers, we didn't have any injuries, and we did a really good job of protecting arms and, being pretty strict on pitch counts and stuff. But despite all that, Mess was tired, and he uncharacteristically was wild that day. He had like 5 walks in only 3-4 innings, whatever he threw, which is just very uncharacteristic of him. And as I was kind of watching it go on, I knew he was tired, and I remember even asking him, how he feels, and of course, like every other player, specifically pitcher, I'm fine, coach, which I knew wasn't the case, and so we got him out of there. And I remember, while I don't remember the exact score, I remember when we got him out. We were still within striking distance. The game wasn't out of hand at that point. And if you look at Major League Baseball, you look at Major League Baseball teams, especially when you get in the playoffs, they bring in their whether it be their closer or whoever their best bullpen arm is early in the game if they have to. And for us, that was Sal. And we couldn't let that game, or at least we tried not to let that game get out of hand. So while Sal was mainly our closer, we brought him in, in the 5th or 6th or whatever it was, to try to bridge a couple of innings to allow our offense to maybe swing ourselves back into the game. And Sal, same thing, was very uncharacteristically wild that day. He'd given up, quite a few runs. I think most of them were actually unearned. And the game just kind of got out of hand. We rode those guys, all season long. You mentioned Sal had the 0 ERA going into that game. In fact, I don't even think he had given up even an unearned run going into that game. And you know what? It just, he didn't have it that day, and that's to be expected at some point during the season. It's unfortunate it happened during a playoff game, but and that takes absolutely nothing away from what he did all season long for us, both him and Mess. I think they were both just out of gas, and it was just an unfortunate time for them to run out of gas.
So another thing, I mean, so this was the first year, we didn't know this at the time, but the first year of the legendary Utica career of Taylor Olmsted. I know you and T.O., I know you followed along with what he did, in 16 and 17, his final years in Utica, and ultimately becoming, first Utica player to have his number retired, before his final home game. But do you have, I mean, granted, we knew he was a talented player, that much is for sure. But did you ever envision him becoming an icon for the franchise in the years that followed?
With summer ball, the nature of summer ball, it's very rare for guys to play for the same summer ball team, 2 years in a row. It happens, but it's pretty rare.
Even more for three.
I was just saying, and then Taylor goes out and does it 3 years in a row. That's almost unheard of. And I remember, Taylor is a wonderful kid. I remember, when we were kind of wooing Taylor to come play, and I actually was the guy who, throughout the entire process, I remember talking to his coach at UConn, and I remember getting in touch with Taylor. I even remember talking quite a bit with his dad, Wayne, who was a wonderful man. And just throughout the whole process, just thinking, man, this, great family, great kid. And then, we got Taylor to sign, and when he, we all, met each other in Utica, I just remember thinking, man, this is a stand-up guy. And it doesn't surprise me that the fans, just took to him, because he has that energy and just a very positive attitude. And it's just extremely personable. And I remember the last day, not the last day of the season, but when everyone was leaving, everyone was checking out of the Hotel Utica, and everyone was getting ready to go home. I remember a couple of guys were really emotional, and Taylor was one of them. And I remember thinking, Taylor did everything he could to avoid leaving. And I remember he would start talking to somebody else, or something would happen, and he was purposely prolonging, him having to leave. And I remember that. And Kyle Shea was another one too, kind of the same thing. They just didn't want to leave. So the fact that Taylor came back the next year, and even the year following that as well, no, it's not really surprising to me, because I remember how much fun, how much Taylor really enjoyed that season. And I remember how much the fans just really took to him. So no, to be honest with you, no, it doesn't surprise me that he has become such kind of an icon in the organization.
And especially for his play. I mean, his first year in Utica, he tied for the league lead in homers with 7 that year. And, he was doing a lot of it, smart decisions by you, putting him in the 9 hole. And I remember, speaking of Wayne, I know he did it in front of him. One of them was in front of him on Father's Day, and that tied a game against Victor. But I mean, I feel like you must have heard about, the moment that really cemented him. I mean, would it surprise you to see a guy like Taylor do what he did again in a game against a team you became familiar with, the Diamond Dogs, where he got a 3-run homer and a grand slam to tie the game in back-to-back innings that sparked a down 9-0 comeback to win 10-9.
Yeah. Taylor was an absolute stud for us. And I remember he struggled in the early part of the season. And his batting average was toiling in the 100s, low 100s. And you could just see the raw talent in Taylor, just a freak athlete. And you knew it was going to click at some point. And when it did, he was going to take off. It was just a matter of, when is it going to all click? When is it all put together? I remember he worked a lot with Dylan Vitale, who was exactly, who was our hitting coach at the time. And he worked a lot with Dylan. And, and we did. And so early on in the season, we had Taylor in the 3-hole, the 4-hole, because, we kind of expected him to be that middle of the order bat, run producing bat. And, he really struggled in the early part of the season. So I remember, making the conscious decision to move him down in the order. And I started thinking about where I was going to put him. and it was either going to be in the 7 hole or the 9 hole. And I ultimately decided with the 9 hole because he could run. He could run really well, and you always like to have speed at the bottom of the order. So I remember making the decision to put him in 9 hole. I talked to him about it, and just I explained, what the rationale was. The biggest reason is to take some pressure off him. Take some pressure off of him, and allow him to kind of find his swing. And once he, did that, the plan all along was to kind of gradually move him back up in the order, which we eventually did. And I remember he hit almost everywhere in the lineup that year. I think if I remember right, he kind of settled in like the 2 hole, 3 hole. But again, he found his swing through a lot of hard work on his end, a lot of work, a lot of early work, and just did a great job. And I remember he hit like 7 home runs, that season, which again for a wood bat league, that's that's a pretty big number. We're talking about 40 to 50 games wood bat. 7 dingers. That's pretty good. And I don't remember if he led the league, but he should have been pretty close to the league lead.
I believe he tied for it with somebody from Amsterdam. I believe it might have been Hunter Tackett. That sounds about right. I mean, yeah, it's really crazy that, again, it's been 7 years and, you've still followed this team because of your connection to the city. So I guess the question becomes, obviously we know that you're coming back this summer as the pitching coach, essentially, turning the clock back almost to 2013. But so why now?
It's funny. It's funny how life works because, again, talking a lot with my wife, I told her that I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back at least one more time because, after that season in 2015, I talked to George a lot about coming back in 2016. I really appreciated the fact that George wanted me back in 2016. It just didn't work out. That has nothing to do with George or the organization or my feelings about it. Had nothing to do with that. It's more just kind of, my kind of personal life, and my sons were getting older and they were starting to get more involved in their baseball and their travel ball and stuff. And so I wanted to kind of dedicate more time to them. And I remember talking to my wife after I had told George that I was not going to be coming back. I remember telling my wife that was probably it. That was probably my last opportunity. That chapter of my life, maybe over at that point. And didn't give a lot of thought about it, in the first couple of years after that, 2017, 2018, etc. But I remember, about a year or so ago, telling my wife, God, I really miss it. I really like to do it one more time, at least one more time. And it's just funny how life works. Just randomly, I got a text from George asking me, would I be interested in coming back, in a pitching coach / bench coach role. And again, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but my role, this upcoming season is actually going to be more than just pitching coach. I'm really going to be kind of Doug's, right-hand man. I'm going to be coaching third base. I'm going to be doing a lot of that stuff, obviously working with the pitchers as well, along with Doug. Obviously, Doug's a pitching background as well. And when Doug sent me that, when George sent me that text, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I talked to my wife and said, hey, what do you think? Because, happy wife, happy life. I have to have the boss on board, so I remember talking to her about it, and we were actually in back east last summer. We were in New York City. We were in Vermont visiting her family. We were supposed to go to Boston, but that part of our trip got messed up with flights and everything. So that's the whole thing. But I couldn't believe it. And so I talked to my wife, make sure she was on board. I asked George, I said, hey, listen, I am very interested. Can you just give me a couple of days? Let me just talk to my wife and make sure logistically, because again, like, you mentioned at the beginning of this, I am a California guy. So, uprooting my family and myself, and going across the country, it's logistically just got to make sure that that's gonna work. So, talked over my kids. My twins are 17 now, and they have their own baseball, and they're actively involved in that. And I had to make sure everyone was on board. I knew I was on board, but I had to make sure they were on board. And once they all and I don't think anybody's more excited than my sons. They are ecstatic, for me to do this again, and to be able for them to be able to go out there and kind of hang out in the clubhouse, hang out with the guys and stuff again, like they did, 2013 and 2015. And once I knew they were all on board, I texted George back and said, yeah, man, I'm in. And, we kind of talked about some logistic stuff and again, kind of what my role would be. And, that's basically what George said, be kind of Doug's right-hand guy. And I've talked to Doug and we kind of ironed out all that stuff. And I cannot wait. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to do this. And again, especially kind of having in the back of my mind that I thought that I thought this door had closed, especially when I did not come back in 2016, knowing that George wanted me to. I would like to have thought I did not burn a bridge, by not coming back, but you never know. And I remember actually I ran into George in Cooperstown. This was summer of, I want to say 2017, 2018, 2019, one of those summers. We were back east visiting my wife's family, and my boys wanted to go to Cooperstown. So we went to Cooperstown, and the Blue Sox were there on a day off. The team, I guess, did a trip over there. And I saw George, and I hadn't seen him, since 2015. We're friends on Facebook and stuff. And so, we would interact and everything, but I hadn't seen him. And, he got a big smile on his face when he saw me. And that made me feel really good. And we had a great conversation. Never talked about, coming back to coach or anything like that. It was just good to catch up. And then, like I said, here a couple of years later, to get that text, get that invite, to come back in the organization, especially now the organization now compared to what it was in 2015. And that's no knock on Butch, or anybody who was involved in the organization, at that time. But just to hear and to see, through social media and everything, all of the things that are going on now with the organization, I am just ecstatic to be a part of it again.
Obviously, like this past summer, the fan interaction now compared to, the 2 years you were here before, just from afar, do you kind of see them like, I want to be a part of that now?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, over the past, 7 years or so, especially since, George kind of took over, ownership of the team, and I'm just seeing the evolution of the organization, from the Brewers to the Blue Sox, and to the evolution to, where the organization is today. Again, being the fact that I do follow, the Blue Sox on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. And to see everything, from the beautiful facility, that they have over in the mall, to just the thing that struck me the most, again, just watching all the highlights, following everything on social media, the amount of fans that are at the game now. You could count the number of people sometimes on two hands, that would come to some of our home games, before. And now, again, through social media, I would see stuff, and the place is packed. And that's, to have that kind of atmosphere is amazing. And to see some of the updates that have been done, to the clubhouse. I remember, one of the social media things where they kind of took a tour of the clubhouse, and I remember looking like, that wasn't there when I was there. And just to see all that stuff, it is amazing. And I cannot wait to be a part of it. And I remember, over the last couple of years, thinking, just being gotten jealous, like, wow, that we did not have that, in 2013 or even 2015.
It also helps when, I took over for Scott Schuster in the PA role, and now I handle all that. Did you see any of the...
I love Schuster. You know what? It's funny. Schuster, And I just interacted today on Facebook. I love Schuster. So I want to see that guy, not to take your job, obviously, Timmy, but I want to see that guy at the ballpark because I love Schuster.
I mean, I
bet he's a happy man, by the way. I know he's a big Braves fan, so he's got to be a happy man after the Braves won the World Series.
I mean, I would be too, but I mean, it's really funny how things worked out. And just, like I went from broadcasting, as you knew, to doing PA and all the sound effects. So, I mean, I don't know if you saw it all, but like seeing that, obviously we talk about having fans and numbers is a big thing, but the involvement's a big thing. Did you see any of, the whole pump it up thing throughout the summer this year?
Absolutely. Oh, when I say I follow the team and follow the organization on social media, I mean, I would follow all summer. And again, just to see all the different promotions and all the different social media things, just to get more awareness, more fan participation. I mean, you talk about a professional organization. I mean, that is what the Utica Blue Sox have turned into. It is a professional organization. When I talk to people about, the Blue Sox and kind of, what I'm doing and everything, the best way I describe it is, listen, if you've ever been to a minor league baseball, a game, that's what this is. The organization is professional and top flight from everything, that the organization does. The only difference between us and a minor league team is the kids aren't getting paid to play. They're still in college. Otherwise, it is a first-class professional organization. And again, that is something that I cannot wait to be a part of, in the dugout and in the clubhouse and in the community. It is something I'm really looking forward to.
So, last but not least, I mean, it's crazy to think, like years afterward, you see everything that happened after 2015, but is it kind of crazy to think that what your 2015 team did essentially laid the foundation for all the Blue Sox success that has happened since then?
I know you have said that in the past, and I appreciate it. But the reality is that while, yes, we had success in 2015, yes, we were, the first PGCBL, the first time to be in the playoffs for the organization. But the reality is it's all of you guys. It's really all of the non-playing personnel in the organization, all the off-field personnel, everybody from, George to you to, everybody else who is now involved in the organization. You are the guys who really laid that foundation with all of your guys' work. What we do on the field, that certainly plays a part, in it. And I'm always appreciative, and I've heard you say that a couple of times now, but it's all of you guys. It's all of you guys who do, all the promotions on Instagram. It's you guys who goes out into the community and promotes, the Blue Sox brand, and drive people, to the ballpark. That's you guys. That's not us. We're a part of it, but you guys should never underestimate all of your guys' work to really build the organization to where it is today.
So, I think that's funny how that turns out to be the penultimate question, but the last one I definitely have for you. I know the league has vastly changed since the last time you were here. So, is that maybe the most exciting part of coming back, seeing some new places, new teams, et cetera? Or, is it a couple other things? I mean, you could elaborate on it however you like.
It's funny that is a part of kind of the excitement of coming back, because like you mentioned there are new teams, Jamestown, being in the league, Jamestown wasn't there before, Batavia, never having been there. I know I'm missing a couple.
Auburn joined the league last year.
Okay, Auburn. I forgot Auburn. Yeah.
Yep. Saugerties,
Saugerties was there.
Yeah. I mean, their first game ever was against us.
And that was a game Ryan Simpler started.
Yeah.
We
Taylor got
the
2
win.
triples.
What's that?
Taylor got 2 triples. 2.
Did he? See, that I remember. I remember Simpler started the game. We were on the road. It was their first game ever. We're on the road. Simpler started, and then I want to say Christian Johnson came in after through like a 2/3 of an inning, had a little bit of control issues, and then Messier came at the end because I remember Messier was going to start like our 4th, 5th game, but we also had a day off in there, so we needed to kind of get him, a little bit of time on the mound, and we kind of used that as a bullpen session basically. And he threw like an inning and 2/3 or 2 innings, whatever it was, and we treated it basically as a bullpen to get him ready for that 4th, 5th game. And I remember us getting the win. I remember we were tied like in the 5th, 6th inning. And if I remember right, we ended up winning like 4-2, 5-2, something like that.
It was like 9-6. It was a slugfest.
Was it okay? Maybe yeah. I remember it was close at some point. And then I remember it was a tie game going later in the innings, and I know we pulled ahead. But yeah, so no, that is definitely a part, of kind of the excitement of coming back to see some of these other stadiums and see. I know Watertown was out of the league for a while, and Watertown's back in. I always enjoyed going up there. I think they have a nice ballpark over there.
Yeah, different team though, the Rapids now.
Yeah, different ownership, but they play in the same ballpark, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I always thought that was a nice stadium. Elmira, I always thought Elmira had a real nice stadium. As well. It's one of the few stadiums that had the visitors clubhouse connected to the dugout, so that was always really nice. That's certainly a part of it, but the biggest thing by far I'm looking forward to is everything in Utica and everything at our stadium and everything with our fans in our organization. That at the end of the day is what I'm most excited about. That at the end of the day is why I wanted to come back and be a part of this. It's everything with our organization, our fans, our city.
So, and we can't wait to have you back as part of that. Again, the newest addition to the coaching staff, although a relatively familiar face, but in the newest addition to the coaching staff in 2022, Chris Amaya. Chris, again, it's been a while. I still remember that, that one night after we beat Mohawk Valley, we're all in Swifties, and you, me, and Tim Benner were at the bar discussing something about JFK and the assassination or something like that. I'm like, this is a guy I can actually, talk to, and I don't have to be afraid of, waltzing into the coach's office or whatever. And it'd be good to see you back here. And we're, again, all of us, not just me, are really excited to get you back here.
Timmy, I'm only coming back under one condition, and that is when we are taking BP and I'm throwing BP. I better hear some WWE theme songs.
It's really funny. I'm trying to get a wrestling night because Raw, there were episodes in '94 that were held at the Odd in Utica.
So real quick, I know we're trying to wrap up here. Couple of things. You and I have talked about this many times. I'm an old school wrestling fan. You and I can talk wrestling, and I'm sure we were going to probably at Swifties and close that place down.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be wrong here. I may be wrong here, but back in I want to say 93, 94, and it was a house show. It was not a Raw taping. It was a house show. There was a tag team title switch, and I want to say it was either the Head Shrinkers won it, or they lost it to Shawn Michaels and Diesel / Kevin Nash. I want to say that was in Utica. I could be wrong. Oh, you know what? No, I am wrong. It was in Vermont. It was in Burlington, Vermont. I'm getting my cities mixed up. I'm getting my New England cities mixed up. But no, I do know that they do run shows. I did not know they ran a Raw taping, which doesn't surprise me. They run Raw tapings everywhere, SmackDown tapings everywhere. But yeah, and I'm trying to remember. If I remember right, you played the Seth Rollins theme when I would come out to the mound to pull a guy or to talk to a pitcher. I for some reason I remember you playing the Seth Rollins theme, which I still love.
I think I might have bestowed that to Scott, you know who that was? It was Big Z. Big Z did it.
Biggs. Biggs. I miss that guy too. But yeah, I mean, I when I'm throwing BP, I want to hear some theme songs. I do have requests, and I know none of them are a part of WWE anymore, WWE/NXT. But cue me up a little Undisputed Era theme song. I always dug that one. Exactly.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got 3/4 of them in AEW now.
Can I get it? Can I get a Chris Amaya, baby?
That's exactly what I'd love to do. But no, for real. I mean, if we do get a wrestling night, I'm gonna make sure we get somebody here that I know you would want it from that era. I'll make sure I get you that at least. But again, it's gonna be weird. You know, we won't see you until late May, early June. But again, we're all excited to get you back, Chris. Again, thanks for the time, man.
Absolutely, Jamie. Look forward to seeing you in person. Looking forward to seeing everybody here in the next couple of months.
So that wraps up this episode of the Soxcast. For Chris Amaya, I'm Tim Best, your PA announcer. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, check back next week for another edition of the Soxcast. Again, thank you all for tuning in, Blue Sox Nation. I'll catch y'all next time.